Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 28. We're going to talk about Postit planning.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
I'm Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey Ingram.
And today on Small Biz Life, we are going to talk about one of Jeffrey's favorite topics.
Yes.
Post-it planning. So this is when we talk about Post-it planning, we're talking about Post-it notes, right? So you're using sticky notes. And what this is great for is it's a really easy, low-cost planning tool. It's very low-tech. So I know a lot of times we talk about things that are very high-tech, but today we're going to talk very low-tech. This is great if you're planning books, courses, podcasts, blogs, anytime you want to do initial brainstorming without having to worry about organization up front. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, essentially, I really started using it in my job as an information technology analyst. And I was reading around on essentially ways to better pull requirements out of individuals. And so Post-it notes were one of the suggestions. So essentially, that's really where I started using it a lot.
Yeah, I've used it in my college courses when I'm trying to do content development. I've used it for my YouTube channel for Accounting in Focus. It basically allows you to dump ideas without worrying about organization and just get everything out of your brain.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the keys to brainstorming really is because if you try and organize as you're doing it, you're using two different processes in your brain. One is to roll out ideas. And the other one is to organize, essentially place judgments upon ideas and, categorize them because humans, we do operate better once we categorize things. But the problem is when you use those two things at the same time, what could end up happening is that you stop dumping the information out. You lose out on some ideas that you might come to. And one of the things to keep in mind when you're doing it is all of the ideas that come out will not be good directly, but sometimes through the laughter of the process, especially if you're doing it with another person, you're going to sit there and, as you start to organize it and look at them and really judge them, go, that's ridiculous, but oh wait, we could do this. And it's a slight modification. And it's a way also to help ensure the humor still shows up in what you're brainstorming, especially if that's important to you, or you can sort of tamp it back when you're actually creating products or shows or blog posts from it.
Right. You could even, if you're doing like a revamp on your website, and you're trying to figure out like what you want to put on your website, like this is also a really good technique for that. Anything where you have multiple ideas, multiple stages, multiple pieces, this is a really good way to brainstorm.
And I find too, one of the flaws in many websites are navigation. Putting something out on a board like this to where you can start seeing, okay, now I have every type of content I want on my site there. And I think I want to organize it this way. I can then start laying out the way I want to organize it and see I have 4, 5, 6 different levels of content, which means you probably have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 levels people will never see from your homepage and maybe never even get to.
Right. So this is a really good way to start and kind of think about how you're going to put your project together. Okay. So really low tech. Okay. Here's what you need. You ready? And this is all going to be in the show notes for episode 28, smallbizlife.com. Okay, but here's what you need. You need Post-it notes. Don't get like the really big ones with all the lines on them. We've either used like the really small ones. They're probably like 2 inches by 2 inches. or we'll use the next size up.
The original size ones, which are, I think, 3x3 maybe.
Right. You're not writing a tremendous amount of information. So you just want normal size Post-it notes, no lines, because then you're going to be encouraged to try to fill in all those lines. So don't do that. You need a pen or a pencil. Okay. Doesn't matter which one. And I think pen is actually better because with a pencil, you encouraged to erase stuff.
I don't really hardly use pens very much anymore unless I don't have access to a pencil quickly or a sharpened pencil quickly.
Well, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to be erasing things. That's why you're using Post-its. And then you need a wall or a large dry erase board or just a large surface. So if your dining room table is all cleaned off, you could use that. That'd be fine. But you need somewhere to stick all these Post-it notes.
Yes.
So you can organize them later.
Most definitely.
Okay. So explain how you start this process.
So essentially I hold in, if I'm working with Kristen, she holds the Post-it notes and writes stuff down.
That's so we can read the handwriting.
So we can read them. One of the weaknesses of the Post-it note system is sometimes you can't read what you've written down if you are people like Jeffrey. And essentially, I usually like to write one of the main thing I'm trying to brainstorm out, and I put it at the top. And then essentially just I spit out an idea. Kristen writes it down. As she's put it on the wall, I'm spitting out more ideas. She's like, hold on. Or she'll have her own ideas, and she'll write those down, and we'll put them on. And it's actually even kind of useful if you have multiple people to have everyone have some Post-it notes in their hand and to write stuff down. Because the hold on part is actually kind of a risk.
Yeah.
Because you, once again, the slower you are to get to the ideas out, the more likely you are to forget them.
Right. And you want to write down your ideas in 1 to 4 words. You don't want to use full sentences. You're just looking for main ideas so that you and the people that are helping you do this know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Essentially what you don't want is to worry about grammar or spelling or anything but the idea.
So when I was doing accounting in Focus, I first started doing financial accounting topics. That's the first part that I wrote. And so I grabbed a stack of sticky notes and I started writing down ideas for things that I wanted to put on the website. So one of them might have been depreciation. One was accounts receivable. One was cash. One was talking about petty cash. And you just write them down as fast as you can, stick them on the wall.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what order they go in. It doesn't, just put them up there.
Yeah.
Okay. And you want to keep doing this until you think you're out of ideas.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if they're good ideas, if they're bad ideas, if they're silly ideas. We put silly stuff down on Post-it notes when we do this.
Sometimes lewd.
We try to keep it clean.
No, we shouldn't. And you shouldn't. Don't limit yourself when doing it in any way. And that's really tricky. No self-censoring, because any self-censoring interferes with your brainstorming.
Right. So write down whatever you come up with.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Just don't share out those lewd ideas that aren't quite appropriate for your audience or potentially any audience out there.
Right. Okay. So you just want to keep doing this. So if you're doing a book, then you want to, any ideas that you come up with that are related to the title of your book. Let's say you're writing a book on WordPress. Okay. So some of the things that you would think about is parent themes, child themes, plugins, page speed.
Yes.
Right. So each one of these is one Post-it. Doesn't matter what order they come out of your brain in.
Yes.
You might talk about widgets, sidebars, navigation. Just get it out onto sticky notes.
Yep.
Okay. Each idea is its own single sticky note. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. Then once you think that you've got all the sticky notes together, and we found that even when we think we're done, we're really not done.
Yeah, you always want to have at least one person available, and if it's just you and you're offhand, put the Post-it notes and the writing utensil in that one hand as you start reorganizing it. If you're with someone else, whoever has the better handwriting holds onto the Post-it notes, and you start organizing it into appropriate things. So going back to the WordPress thing, maybe, you sit there and go, okay, themes. And so you have a section with themes, and you might even add at that point, like, oh, wait, yeah, this is all theme stuff. So let me write one that says themes. I'll put it down on top, and then also organizing the content underneath it that is related. And I might not even be writing it down in the order I think I'm going to speak about it, but it's just to try and get it separated out into the ultimate categories that you're going to produce your content in.
Yeah. So usually what I like to do when I think I'm done brainstorming is I start to kind of look at the wall or the surface that all the sticky notes are in, and I start to think about themes. Mm-hmm. And then what I'll actually do is I like to pull all the sticky notes down. Mm-hmm. And then if I'm using a whiteboard, I'll write the themes on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
If I'm using a wall, then I'll write the themes on sticky notes and put those, in set up categories kind of on the wall. Mm-hmm. And then I'll look at each sticky note and say, okay, which of these categories would this area fit into? And if it doesn't fit into one of those categories, sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually just put it back on the bottom to see, if I have enough sticky notes left over to be able to put it into one of these main categories that I have. I may find out that I'm missing categories.
Yes.
So once then I start taking my sticky notes and putting them in, underneath one of the categories to see kind of how many ideas I have in each category. So we're still not really putting things in order.
No.
We're just putting things into main ideas, main categories.
And the biggest reason why you're not trying to do order at the same time is as you do that, you might come up with a few more ideas. So you write them down and add it into that category. And then when you go all the way through, you then go back again. And now you're actually trying to start ordering it in what you think is a logical sequence. And it might even change a few times. That's why they're good to be sticky notes, because you can kind of remove them and put them back up several times. But as you're doing that, once again, you're saying, well, if I'm going to go from this subject to this subject, if I'm going to go from WordPress menus to WordPress theme options, I need something about widgets. And so now you're adding in another thing that you're thinking of why you're ordering it, because your brain starts to try and transition things when it's seeing the ideas next to each other. And so as you get it into order, you can sit there and then even add in more ideas. Usually at every layer of doing this, you're adding in new ideas.
Right. And that's the nice thing with this, is that it really gets your brain churning. Mm-hmm. Because the thing that I find is that when I'm trying to put things in order and brainstorm at the same time, at least the way my brain works, it shuts down the brainstorming part because the order part wants to take over. Think about like when you've had to do outlines before, you kind of think, okay, what goes in this section? But your brain might be thinking about another section.
Yeah.
And I think that's when, when students are like writing papers, I think a lot of the times their papers become discombobulated because their brain is going off into a different direction and they're not thinking about that section. So, the great thing with this, especially for people that are visual, this is uber visual.
Yeah.
Very low tech, easy to do, very cost effective.
And one suggestion, and if the brainstorming isn't starting, you put your note at the top and it's not working, and there's just nothing going down, maybe write out one category. Just to start writing stuff down. And sometimes that itself will start. But as soon as ideas start coming out, just write down all of the ideas. And what you'll also do too, and the good thing is if you're writing, let's say a blog post for a year, that's an exercise Chris and I went through, and we probably spent more time on it because we didn't brainstorm it out this way. And part of it was just the way we work. We try to simulate it on paper. And you can't quite capture it the same if you have like a rule line paper that you're trying to do it on. For some reason, at least for us, or at least for me, it doesn't work as well. We still got done relatively quickly, But, we sat there and we brainstormed out the next 52 weeks of, was our goal, the next 52 weeks of content for this show. And what we found is when we were going through that process, we lost a little bit because we weren't brainstorming it out correctly. But the thing was, when you do it this way to try and get your content, what you'll find is you'll start seeing themes that you didn't realize that you might have over the next year. I wish I could think of one right now. What's the helper not helpful?
We came up with when we were brainstorming a category called help or hindrance.
Yes.
And so we came up with a lot of things that people use in their daily lives to determine whether or not that's going to help or hinder your business. And it just kind of like came up with a thing that we were like, oh, this help or hindrance. And then we're like, what about that help or hindrance?
Yeah.
And, we didn't have our sticky notes with us. We were just brainstorming out like pages in a notebook. But, that kind of drove us in one direction. And we've kind of had that happen before when we've been doing brainstorming for different projects where you kind of come up with one idea and then another idea off that and another one and another one and another one, and sometimes when that happens, you end up losing your train of thought where you were going before.
Yeah. And I know one of the things I like to do when I'm done with the content, and I recently started doing like this with my other podcast, and there's certain types of things I like to cover every month. So, it's kind of like this podcast where there's, episode per week, and I have some episodes which are real life ways to do things. I have another type, which is what I call erratic explorers, which looks into, actual fantasy works that are out there. And I have a few different areas like this, one on storytelling, one on world building. And I try not to underwhelm the world building because that's the focus of the show. So I sit there and go, okay, the first week of every month now is going to be this type of post. And so now I have this bank of posts where I can just fill in those categories. And if you ever run out of ideas, you cut that theme off and you replace it with a different theme.
Right. So once you've got all of your Post-it notes organized, you can either, if you've got a good camera, you can take a picture of them. A lot of times what I'll do is I will pull the category or the theme Post-it note off, and then I will put all the Post-its related to that theme underneath it.
Yeah.
Then you can go into either something like Scrivener if it's writing, or you can put it down in a Word document or in a notebook. But then you've got like a really nice outline that you've been thoughtful about.
One of the things I like to do, like when it's not content for a book, when it's actually like, say, content for your website, is I have an Excel document that I use, and I share it out with my co-host. And essentially, I have a list of all of the episodes, and then I have categories of which I can mark, okay, it's been recorded, it's not been recorded. I have a list of what's actually going to play out, and I have a secondary list where we can just throw in ideas at any time. And like the funny thing is, I think Chris and I created the 52 weeks of content, and one of the issues we had was always like, what am I going to write this week? And now we just kind of go through the list and say, what's inspiring to us this week? Or what do we think is relevant to our audience this week? And less worried about, oh, geez, what are we going to do? Because we have a huge list. I think we've added more on than we've used at this point.
Yeah. So kind of what I actually have in front of me, if you're doing any sort of like regular content development, what we did is when we brainstormed, we wrote the main topic for each podcast episode on the top of the page. And then every week we go through and we kind of flip through all those and say, like Jeff said, what do we want to do this week? And then I actually go through and we fill in, okay, so what's the detail? So like if I'm looking at today's episode, it's Post-it planning. We wrote why, and then what do you need? And then how do you do it?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we went through in, this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's really nice because I have all these pages, that I can do all my planning here. all my ideas are here. And this is just, this is a 96-cent composition notebook.
And if you prefer electronics, Scrivener works very well for blog content as well, too. You create a little folder for each post. And so then when you've decided that this is going there, you create a little folder, with the subject. And then you might have a research notes in there. If you like to type it out in there before you do it in WordPress, you can do it there as well, too. Any images you come up with at the time, you can put them right in a Scrivener now. So that's another reason why Scrivener is useful, because more than just writing books, you can write other things. And also you can sit there, and the beautiful thing with the visual side of Post-it notes is one of the things you're always trying to do are balance chapters in nonfiction. So, you're covering all of your content. And it's always like, how many chapters do I need? But now you can sit there and look and say, well, I have all of these themes, but one theme, let's say going back to WordPress again, under posts, I have 75 ideas and I have no more than 10 on the other ones. So now I start trying to break down those 75 into maybe 7 different themes internal to posts. And I can use that to start having my chapter breakdown. So whether I use a Word document or Scrivener to create my outline, I can visually see that the information's basically balanced before I start.
Right. And it's funny because especially when you're doing a book, like you might actually find that your book or your course, or whatever you're working on, it might take a different direction than what you originally thought. Yeah. Because if you do have that where, you've got 75 ideas talking about WordPress posts.
Maybe that becomes a book.
Maybe that's your book, and it's not all of WordPress. It's just that part. So one of the great things with this is that you never know where it's going to take you, but it might take you in a better direction than you originally thought you were going to go.
Most definitely. It'll take you into the direction that you're more impassioned about. Maybe you thought it was going to be mainly about the visuals because that really annoys you on websites, but when it comes down to it, it's all posts you're talking about.
Right. Exactly. So, it's funny because we talk a lot about technology in our podcast, but some of our most basic planning tools are completely low tech.
Yes.
We went to breakfast this morning. We grabbed the notebook, right? And I don't know what we would do if I ever lost this notebook. Because it's got all of our, every time we come up with a podcast idea, we chuck it in this notebook. And then we plan out all of our episodes through it. And then once we've actually recorded the episode, I actually draw a line through the page and I'll write the episode number at the top. So we can kind of go through. I also have a page in the back that has a list of all the episodes that we've done.
And the worst part is, I think it's the professor in her. She actually grades the episode when we're done too. Like that was a C. And I'm like, what, C? Can I get extra credit? She's like, no, she's a tough teacher.
I do not grade the episodes. Sometimes we're like, oh, that was a good episode.
Yeah.
Or that was, but I think a lot of times in business, we think like we need to have the best technological tools. Everything has got to be high tech.
Yeah.
And sometimes we put so many tools in our toolbox that we get overwhelmed and we get nothing done.
Yes. When you have 500 productivity tools, you're probably not productive.
Yes.
And one of the other things for you people who are complete snobs for electronics, there is an application for Windows, I think it's called Sticky Notes, which will allow you to kind of do that. I don't suggest it because once again, there's a little bit more time in hitting that plus sign. But if you are really faster at typing than writing, doing it that way is good. My other issue with that is it's usually tough to get them all spread out evenly and to be able to look at them as well on a monitor. But it's one way to go about it if you prefer to try it that way. And I believe that comes free with all Windows. I'm not positive.
Yeah, it's a widget for Windows.
Yeah. I'm sure Apple has a similar product, and I'm sure Google probably has the same. But I mean, obviously on the phone, you're not doing it effectively as actual Post-it notes.
Right. I mean, the nice thing with using Post-it notes is if you've got a big, huge wall, you can spread everything out. You don't have to worry about trying to fit it onto a screen. Because
those kind of worries, even if it's only for a few seconds, takes you out of your brainstorming mind.
Right. And that's the thing too, is that you might think like, oh my God, I can't fit this all on the screen, so it must be too much.
Mm-hmm.
I need to scale back.
Yeah.
You know, if you have to use 300 sticky notes, do it.
Yeah. And then typically one of the things I do as I'm wrapping up a Post-it note session is I take my orders and I then stick them all one on top of each other. So the top level things, the very top item. And then I go over to the computer and I start taking them off one by one and putting them, like she said, into Word or Excel or into something electronic. So I have a permanent version of which I can back up.
Right. And that's always a really good idea, is that once you're done with the brainstorming part, get it into something electronic.
And be cognizant you might come up with more ideas. So make it in a way that you can access easy from your phone, from your computer. This is a good use of something like Evernote, or if you have Office 365 or you have Google Documents. These are all good ways to be able to do it. And I've done that where I've been texting with my friend at lunch and we come up with a good idea and I'm trying to, between text, open up sheets on Google Drive and add one more item into my sheet.
Right. And that's the nice thing with, either using Google Docs or Google Spreadsheets, is that if you're trying to collaborate with somebody else, you can give them rights to the document. Yeah. So I know you do that with Michael,
yes,
your co-host, that you have the document shared. So if he comes up with ideas, he can add them in too.
Yeah.
So, once you get past that initial brainstorming session, anybody who's working with you on the project, you want to make sure that they have access to it as well.
And the amazing thing is, if you're very intentional with those ideas and you get them into your document once you've done that initial brainstorming on Post-it notes, it's like we will probably never run out of episode ideas again.
No, I don't think so.
Where before we'd sit there and spend a certain amount of time every morning to go, okay, what are we going to talk about this week? Did you see something interesting in the news? Did you see something interesting in one of the groups this week that would make a good topic? Now, we can just go through our list unless something comes to mind, in which case we just add it into our list.
And it's funny because I think this week we picked one of the topics that we had in the notebook, but then I think we added like 3 or 4 more.
Yes.
So we're always building on that list. And that's one of the beautiful things with putting together like a 52-week content list is that, if you have like 3 ideas and you're like, I don't really like any of these, but if you have like 50 something, the likelihood that you're going to find something you want to write about is probably good.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing something topical, I have a folder in my Chrome browser that's called Small Biz Life News. And when I see news items that I think are important, I will put them in there. So if I'm ever looking for something to share with the group or something to share on my page, I have this whole list of stuff. And most small business news doesn't go stale. It's never anything that's like catastrophic that if I don't share it, within the next week, it's going to go bad. So, just doing little things like that to try to stay ahead of the game is really good. And I think for us doing this entire planning session, I think we said last week that we came up with 52 ideas between salad and dinner.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to take a long time, especially if you're really passionate about what you're doing.
Almost definitely. And if it's one of those things where you're sitting there and you're just getting started off and you're uncertain, and I think most people are when they're starting off, like, really, how long can I do this for? Posting once a week, or some people will do multiple times a week, or maybe once a month, whatever you choose. If you can't plan a whole year in advance, take some more time and reevaluate if you're really on the right track.
Yeah. Because if this is something that you want to do for a long time and you can't come up with a year worth of content, then you're going to have trouble doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things with small businesses that, I think if we probably would have spent another hour, we probably could have come up with another, 50 or 60 topics.
Even though my suggestion always is, once you get to the point where the ideas are stopping, don't force it. If you're not coming up with the ideas, one, it could be a mindset thing. Look to the things that inspire you. Like I said, get started with a few categories, browse the news on whatever area you operate in, especially for content development. I should probably talk about that. I've never talked about that before, or, because you're always looking for a way to share your perspective. And once you get going, you should be able to be going.
Yeah.
And that's when you know that you've picked something that your brain's really attached to.
Absolutely. So this week, pick up some Post-it notes. If there's anything that you need to do planning for, whether it's a new project, maybe you're trying to decide, ways to network in your business, you could use this, for networking. You can use this for list building. You can use this for project planning. What's my next product going to be? What's my next service going to be? This is one of the greatest tools that we have in business is Post-it note planning. And it's hard to say that because it's so low tech, but seriously, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Try it out. Thank you for listening to Small Biz Life. If you enjoyed the show, please take a few minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Please visit smallbizlife.com to view today's show notes, take this week's poll, join the Facebook community, follow us on Twitter, or submit a question for the mailbag. Support the show by checking the resources page or by going to smallbizlife.com/Amazon whenever you shop.
This was Small Biz Life. This was Small Biz Life.